Hey guys, this is Dave with Gustard. Today we're going to be taking a look at the Gustard R26 DAC streamer. But before we do, if you like our videos and have not already subscribed to the Gustard channel, please take a quick second and hit that subscribe button. Also, this is going to be the first 4K review video I've done for the Gustard channel, so please let me know what you think in the comments. Okay, let's quickly go over what's included in the box. Of course, we have the Gustard R26 streamer itself. We also have a power cord, a USB cable, a remote, a Bluetooth antenna, and it also comes with a disc with instructions and other information. So before we jump into the specifications and sound, I quickly want to talk about what the R26 DAC streamer does. Now, there are a few ways you can play music through the R26. You can either connect it to a PC, a laptop, or a phone via digital input or Bluetooth, in which the R26 will essentially operate as a DAC. You can also connect it via a network using software like Roon, UPnP, Tidal, and AirPlay. As for the design of the R26, you can choose between silver or black. I chose the black option because it was just more appealing to me. The design of the faceplate is pretty cool. I like the understated approach they took with the overall button layout and the shape of the screen. The only thing I don't like is how small the menu is, because what's the point of being able to control the menu from a distance with a remote if you can't read it from a distance? I've literally got to put my reading glasses on and put my face 8 inches from the display to be able to read it. Besides that, it's fine. The front looks pretty cool. And if you look at the sides of the R26, you can see they've even shaped the heat sinks to follow the contour of the shape of the body, which looks really nice. And as for the build quality, it's top notch in my opinion. The craftsmanship of the R26 is just beautiful, not just visually, but to the touch as well. The textures of the controls look and feel premium, and when you're interacting with the device, nothing feels loose or clunky. The device itself has good weight, so when you're holding it in your hands, it just feels like a well-built device worthy of a high-end system. Now, as far as the specifications of the R26, the Gustard R26 comes in at $1,650 and features discrete R2R architecture, 1-bit native DSD support, and also supports up to 32-bit PCM. But in order for the R26 to decode the native DSD512 content, you have to have it connected via USB. And for 1-bit DSD, you have to have it connected via I2S, which is the HDMI output. And if you're using Tidal, it can decode MQA also, if you like MQA. It also supports Bluetooth 5.0 and decodes basically all of the most common Bluetooth codecs like LDAC, aptX HD, aptX LL, AAC, and of course SBC. It also has a clock synthesis feature in case you want to add an external clock, but of course it has its own built-in clock as well. And as for the included remote, the build quality is okay. It basically gives you all the controls you need. You can use it to put the device in standby mode, control the volume, and navigate the built-in menu. And speaking of the menu, if you turn the volume wheel all the way up, it'll automatically put the device into fixed output mode. Otherwise, the volume wheel operates as a normal volume control. Now, diving into the R2R's menu itself, the first option it gives you is your PCM filter options. You can select between fast, mid, or slow, or you can bypass them altogether by selecting the NOS, or non-oversampling function, which also sets the level of the output volume to fixed by bypassing the preamplifier. And that is actually your second option in the menu. There are also DSD, attenuation, phase, brightness, and external clock adjustments that you can make in the menu. As for the controls, display inputs and outputs on the front, we have a standby button, and we also have a fairly large OLED display and a volume wheel with a button in the center. The volume wheel also doubles as a controller so that you can navigate through the included menu. Of course, you can also navigate through the menu using the included remote as well. And on the back, we have two sets of outputs, a pair of RCA outputs and a pair of XLR outputs. And as for digital inputs, we have a USB Type-C that is exclusively used for firmware upgrades. You also have a USB Type-B, an I2S, Ethernet port, coaxial Bluetooth antenna connector, a 10 megahertz clock input, AES, EBU XLR input, and finally an optical input. It also gives you the option to switch between 115 or 230 volts, depending on where you live, and then the main power button is on the back as well. Okay, let's talk about the sound of the R26. So I tested the R26 a couple of different ways on my home audio system and on my headphones and IEMs. The components of my home audio system are the Cambridge Audio CXA61, which powers my KEF R300s. And for my headphones setup, I'm currently feeding the signal from the R26 to the topping L70, but I also tested it on several other amplifiers. Of course, I used different sources so that I could test some of the other inputs of the R26, but most of my listening was done with the R26 connected to my network via the Ethernet port so that I could connect it to my Roon software. And when I was setting the R26 up, I designated my main PC as the Roon core. And of course, since my computer's in a different part of the house, when I'm in my living room, I just use my laptop or I use the app on my phone to control the playback. I also tested the USB input using my laptop. And then of course, I tested the Bluetooth. But to be honest, most of my listening was done using the other inputs, as Bluetooth is just not my preferred way of listening. That being said, I was actually pretty surprised by how good the Bluetooth sounded out of the R26. Okay, so the R26 is the first DAC by Gustard to feature discrete R2R architecture, and based on their website, it uses only components of the highest quality. And I actually came across a review of the R26 where someone opened up the R26 and went over all of the internal components and basically confirmed the accuracy of that statement. And of course, I'm not going to open this thing up. That's way too scary for me, so I'm glad somebody else did that. But like I mentioned earlier, the craftsmanship and design is not just impressive on the outside, but on the inside as well. And the sound quality absolutely reflects that. One other feature I should point out is its dual mono construction. This basically means that both the left channel and the right channel have their own dedicated power supply, which from what I understand isn't very common at this price point. So my first method of testing was with my headphones and IEMs on the topping L70. And as I mentioned before, most of my listening was done via digital inputs, so I could listen to higher bit rate and just higher quality audio formats. And my initial impressions of the general sound of the R26 was about what I expected from an R2R DAC, so slightly leaning towards a warmer, analog-y type of sound, but not lacking in detail retrieval at all. As a matter of fact, the R26 managed to strike almost a perfect balance between the two, maintaining an incredible amount of detail, but never ever coming across as clinical or overly analytical. And if you look at the treble a little closer, what you will see is really good extension and a very balanced presentation overall. So the treble has very good presence, but is never sharp or fatiguing. And as for the upper treble or air region, there's plenty of presence, so nothing ever feels lacking or missing in the higher treble frequencies. And as for soundstage, the R26, while not the widest and deepest I've heard, is still excellent and definitely comes pretty close to some of the best I've heard. And that goes for instrument separation layering as well. Instruments and vocals are precisely placed, giving them their own defined space within the sound field. And as for background noise, of course, I used my 2020 Andromeda to test that, and the R26 is absolutely quiet. There's no perceivable background noise at all. And now, where the R2R architecture really shines through is in the mid-range. The natural timbre and realism found in the treble carry through into the mid-range, so vocals and instruments never sound artificial or lacking in density, and have a smoother and just overall more refined presentation. So no parts of the mid-range frequencies are more forward than the others. So everything is presented in a very balanced manner. Also carrying from the treble into the mid-range is the R26's excellent detail retrieval capability. So vocals and instruments have all of the texture and substance you would expect from a high quality audio device. And pretty much every genre of music I tried, electronic, classic, rock, jazz, and acoustic, was well represented by the R26. Also, when I was experimenting with the different filters and NOS mode, I ended up settling on NOS mode. None of the other filters really did that much for me. And since NOS basically disabled the filters, it just seemed to present music in its purest form, at least generally to me, to my ear, in NOS mode. So with the NOS feature on, basically what that does is it disables oversampling. And again, that was just my preferred sound generally. And next we're going to talk about the bass, but before we do, I just want to back up a little bit and talk about the transition from the lower mids into the mid bass, because again, those R2R characteristics aren't just apparent in the mids. It carries through into the bass as well, most notably in the lower mids and mid bass, because that frequency range, if not managed properly, can actually be the difference between you connecting with the music or not. At least in my personal experience, that's the case generally for me. And when talking about the R2R sound, one of the recurring characteristics is instrument and vocal weight, or even just note weight in general. It just seems like there is a little more substance and physicality to the notes, making them sound more tangible and real. And that tangibility and realism can really pull me in and make me feel more connected to the music. And that is exactly what I experienced with the R26. And as you move from the mid bass into the bass, the R26 delivers excellent speed, accuracy, and lots of impact, and extends all the way down into the sub bass frequencies. In short, the bass presentation of the R26 is impactful, it's weighty, it's accurate, portraying bass notes with tactility and realism. So now, just to summarize my experience with the Gustard R26, once I got the R26 all connected and set up, which was fairly easy, I might add, and sat down to listen, I had all of my favorite IEMs and headphones out. And the first thing I did, as I always do, is just sit down and listen to music. I don't analyze it, I don't scrutinize it, I simply just try and enjoy some music. And I do that several times before I actually start the critical listening phase. And I've said this before because it's important, and that these devices are nothing more than a means to an end. And that end is to simply enjoy my music. And from the very first listening session till my last, I enjoyed every second of it. The R26 delivered a smooth, rich sound, but also gave me all the detail and texture I needed, striking that, again, that perfect balance between musicality and articulation. And I know it's a lot of money. I know that $1,650 is a lot of money. So of course I have to ask the question, is it something I would recommend? And the answer is yes. And while there are other dedicated DACs that cost less out there that also sound incredible, if you need these other features, so the streamer, the renderer, the Bluetooth, and also want that unique R2R sound character, then this might be the device for you. And if this is something you think would work for you, I will make sure and leave a link in the description to Hi-Fi Go, because that is my absolute favorite place to shop. They have excellent service and the best pricing, hands down. So that concludes my review of the Gustard R26. Thank you guys so much for taking the time to watch. Please like this video, please share this video, and if you are new to this channel and like my videos and like Timmy's videos, please take a second and hit that subscribe button. Again, thanks so much for watching. I hope you guys have an awesome day.